Welcome again, everyone. Today is Saturday, the 28th of April. Jim and Dave, you guys on?
We are here.
Jim.
Jim?
I'm here.
Good. And David was up on his roof earlier with a clothes hanger trying to get good signal. How's that working for you?
It's a beautiful sunny day, and I can't imagine why the signal's bad, but again,
many chemtrails.
Yeah, cell phones are not the best devices in the world, and the landline doesn't seem to be any better. So let's give it a run with what we've got. Billy, you want to start off and explain what we were going to do today?
We're gonna switch gears, go back to everyone's unfavorite topic of geopolitics. We want to talk about why geopolitics matter, and we want to recap several past events that we've talked about. So, David, why don't you get started, and we'll go from there.
Okay, great. What I'd like to do is just bring us up to speed a little bit, because again, geopolitics sounds boring, but really it's what makes the world go around. You have political bodies who are struggling for resources, energy, money, whatever you want to call it. There's always a struggle going on between the parties. And what we try and do is put together dots and try and come up with what's taken place. Well, sometimes if you look back at past things that Bill and Jim have said, and at the time he might have said, oh, well, there's no facts. That's conspiracy theory, which is a word that I hate. But people say, oh, well, why are they bothering wasting their time talking about those things? They want to know when gold is going to go up, how fast it's going to go up, when they're going to get to be a jillionaire, a millionaire, a Bitcoin millionaire. It's human nature. We all want to know. Unfortunately, again, what you have to try and do is look at world affairs, put dots together, and come up with a scenario. So let's start with a while back, Bill, myself, and Jim had talked about the USS Donald Cook. The USS Donald Cook was a destroyer that was in the Black Sea, and it was rendered allegedly helpless by a electronic warfare measure that the Russians had. Jim and Bill had also tried to cover the USS Fitzgerald, explaining that it appeared to them, on their opinions, that ship was disabled at the time it was hit by another vessel.
We got gonged for that one, David.
Well, again, that never made it onto the air. YouTube said, well, somehow that's bad content. So if we're sitting here and now we know that not only did the USS Donald Cook take place, the USS Fitzgerald took place, the USS McCain took place, another destroyer that was disabled. You have to ask yourself, disabling your enemy's ability to make war without firing a shot. You guys took an enormous amount of heat for this, and I know I have over the past as I try to bring this to people's attention. They look at you like you have three eyes. You guys were spot on that, and with the video that was posted to your site this week where Russia showcased their electronic warfare technology, I think that you guys get a hats off for having pegged it in the very beginning. Bill, you want to run with it?
Yeah, I also want to mention we also posted Fox News ran a story talking about our drones being hacked. So, obviously there is the capability of hacking and rendering useless, harmless, whatever word you want to use. And Fox reported it. So, people who don't believe this is possible or has happened or is happening, go scream at Fox News. Jim?
Well, they all do that. Now, for a moment, think if you could hack a drone, why can't you hack a smart bomb? Why couldn't you turn a rocket right back at the chip that fired it? The strength of the U.S. dollar with the petrodollar falling quickly into history, remains the superiority, supposedly, of the U.S. Armed Forces. I question the superiority, not of the men of courage and the women of courage, none of the heroes on the line who stands on the wall and protects us at night, but the stuff doesn't work. Add two things together. One, our prior administration let our armed forces down terribly by not having inventories of spare parts, etc., so much so that they were in the desert digging apart some of those old ships to try and get some basic equipment. Now, more than half of our Air Force is grounded. Now, if the other half flies into an electronic storm and are rendered useless, what's going to happen? We heard that 105 cruise missiles were fired. We heard 105 cruise missiles hit the target. That's an outrageous lie. We know it now. We know it because of electric warfare and because of the different numbers you were getting every day from other sources other than the U.S. Armed Forces. So the news is so controlled that if you add to that social media is coming under strict control, you start to look like Germany under Hitler. If Hitler was, and on top of that, we're looking defenseless. So if that's boring to you, I don't know exactly what wouldn't be boring.
Let me jump in, Jim, and just say that the dollar is all about geopolitics. So is the euro, so is the yen, so is the pound, the ruble, the yuan, you name it. All fiat currencies are about geopolitics. It used to be when treasuries were filled with gold, it was all about how much gold or how much silver the treasuries actually had. That's not the case now, because all these currencies are backed by individual nations, and the individual nations are directly affected by geopolitics and, like you said, military strength. So while people want to know the exact date and exact time that gold's going to go up, as we discussed prior to the call, on that day when gold and silver lose their shackles, it's too late. It's not only too late, it's probably over. Life as we know it, or as we knew it, will be over at that point. So that's my 2 cents.
Well, the fight that they put on, and continue to put on, dulling the prices of precious metals, is part and parcel of the fractional fiat currency system, and very dependent on the assumption that the United States, the West, is infinitely more powerful as a war machine than any other on the face of the earth. And I agree with you completely. You either have it or you're not going to get it, because on the Monday you come in and find markets closed. What are you going to do? Maybe run down and try and clean out your local coin shop? You think he or she is not going to know? And I think this recent Syrian situation pulled back the curtain and let everybody look, if they would, at the fact that we have been trumped on the nuclear side, probably nuclear, on the electronic side, to the point where making limited war not a feasible selection. So everything becomes more critical if what was our practice of proxy war no longer is functional. You have it, or you're not going to get it. You got food in the pantry. or you're not going to get it from the grocery store. You have your prescriptions in your bathroom closet, or you don't have it. Being prepared is something in past tense, because from that point forward, there is no preparation, there is no quality of life, there is no information, there will be no social media, and what does the world look like the day after that? Well, it looks like the nations around the world with the strongest treasuries will be the survivors, and the nations around the world with the weakest treasuries will be the people who work in the sweatshops, building things that make people comfortable in the richer countries. There's a huge change about to take place, and we are so damn dumb that you can't believe it. Maybe we three know it. Maybe the listeners out there suspect us. But where is the reality to the Joe Sixpack who really does make up the world? Nowhere. Bill?
Hey, Jim, I want to clarify something you had said. You referenced technology, social media, and us now looking like or worse than Hitler's Germany. What Jim was talking about there was back then they burned books. They burned books because they did not want knowledge or truth out there. And what they're doing now, what Google's doing, what Facebook is doing, all Twitter's doing, all of this censoring stuff is multiples worse than burning books.
We're
not only burning books, they're creating complete falsehoods and false fake news goes around the world in a blink of an eye.
Can I jump in here a second? When you use the word censoring, and again, people I don't think even think about it, but if you listen to Catherine Austin Fitts last week, she tells you under the net neutrality laws, they can't essentially censor her. And there's nothing that anybody could do about it because it is the provider's right, if I understood her correctly. Because what she was saying, and Greg agreed with that he has had the same problem, is they have a problem when listeners or readers try to get back to them, where the emails won't even come through to them. So it's obvious that it's taking place. And it's taking place in ways that people don't even realize it's taking place, so that it's the most deceitful. At least if you burn the book, I knew you burned the book. But if you're hindering communication between like-minded people, then it's gone to a whole nother level. And the next level after that will be rounding up the people who you can't shut up. Bill?
Why don't you, because we've got a lot to cover, why don't you just continue with the various topics?
Okay. Well, I broke out and just listed some articles. And again, let's just run down them then, because this way we can cover 4 or 5 of them, because they're all about the same thing. Okay, one of the articles, after we get past the USS Fitzgerald, Russia sent advanced anti-aircraft missiles. Syria warns that it would be a catastrophe. Iran naval commander threatens to sink U.S. ships, create catastrophe situation. We have a real hotbed there. And Iran obviously hacked one of our drones. And when it happened, the U.S. military says, that's BS. They don't have it. They didn't get it. Next thing you know, Iran's parading the thing around. Next thing you know, they've reverse engineered the thing, and I'm sure Russia has and everybody else has by this stage of the game. Syria. My argument is we never belonged there in the first place. It was a pipeline war. Assad was America's friend when we invaded Iraq. John Kerry was over there. 60 Minutes did a glowing interview about him. So in my mind, Syria is all about a pipeline war. The United States and its allies wanted to run a pipeline through there over to Europe. When Assad said no, all of a sudden he had a civil war on his hands. Well,
by the way, David, we got proof positive this week that there was no chemical attack and no one died.
Right, and we've argued that all along. Again, in the conspiracy theory section, just like the British poisoning, it was just another false flag. So where do we have, guys? We're in Syria. We are lined up. Russia now is threatening to move S-300s in, which will shoot down Israeli warplanes, and Iran is threatening to sink our ships. Do they possess technology similar to what Russia and China made? Jim, you want to start?
Well, they possess it one way or the other. The question is, do they make it? No, they don't make it. They buy it. And, the greatest trade now, as has been for the many years, is the trade in weapons. Follow the money. They definitely have it because it's purchasable. And they have items in many situations where they don't even need money, they can barter. But on top of that, if anybody truly understood what is called the gold road, they'd find out that most of Africa's gold has found its way to the Middle East, not to the governments themselves, not to pay any taxes, not paying any royalties. But there are in the gold-producing areas of Africa, Middle Eastern agents with dollars and land cruisers.
Hey, Jim, let me jump in real quick, and then you can continue. I just want to mention a story came out, I think it was early this morning, that the majority of U.S.-produced gold is exported, I think it's to Hong Kong. So U.S. gold is not even staying in the West.
Gold is running as a currency now, and gold is the basis for the currency which is purchasing the high-tech stuff coming out of China and Russia. I mean, gold is so important to all of this we're talking about. It supersedes any conversations on economics because economics in today's world doesn't count as much as MOPE and MSM's comment on anything. And you can see even what we're talking about. Here's the whole paradigm. You lie like mad. You burn the books in a modern sense. You even find that the liberals used to go mad if anybody ever talked about censoring, and they are the keys to censoring now.
Yeah, exactly. That's
why the opening statement that gold is so important as a flag that if it goes up the pole, the prices, which it will reveal the reality of everything we've been talking about. And when the public wakes up, gold will already be out of sight. Yes, they have the weapons.
It'll be out of sight price-wise and out of reach from a tangible standpoint. You will not be able to get it.
You think these countries that will be launching these new major and powerful missiles make the things? Like, to make the thing. They bought them. Now, who does make them? Russia. China, maybe. Well, a little kid with his rocket man said that the whole reason for his program was to make them and sell them. So
let's talk about that for a little bit, Jim. Let's talk about North Korea, South Korea. It's not news anywhere. I mean, literally, if you look at just the mainstream media, it's like ho-hum, big deal. And one thing that nobody's talking about is how is this not a good deal for China? Because now we're not going to have a U.S. base basically right on their border.
Can I jump in here then real quick?
Shoot.
That's why Kim Jong went and visited China before he met with South Korea. He went and talked to his boss.
Exactly.
Think about this. If we lose the reason to have a base in China's backyard, who's the winner?
Or if our ships flying over the South China Sea can't find their way home, who's the winner? Because their electronics will malfunction.
So, yeah, the North Korea thing is, we're going to have to see how that unfolds. But it's been interesting. The New York Times has tried to play it down. The New York Times has been very strange lately. I mean, stranger than even usual, because they jump back and forth between attacking Trump and at the same time wanting war, and then saying they don't want war. It's like they're all over the place. Nikki Haley, for what anybody thinks, I think she's a loose cannon, but she hopes to be president, so she's doing what she's doing, and, there is a certain group that needs to be appeased before you could even think of running for president, and Nikki's going out of her way trying to make that group happy, which, again, brings us back to this Syria situation. Where do we go from here, guys? The chemical weapons appear to be a staged event. Russia appears to have intercepted, or Syria appears to have intercepted, a significant amount of the missiles that were launched at them without even using some of their best defensive weapons.
And they are delivering the S-300s, which Israel says they're going to hit before they're set up, and that's a big problem.
Yeah, well, they have to. Israel has no other choice, or if Israel is to exist.
Well,
pure logic.
David?
Well, so let's just, we can't answer that question. It's out there, and again, it's in that geopolitical situation where you wake up Monday morning and you may not be able to get a gallon of gas. Who knows? I know I just spent the weekend making sure all my fuel tanks were topped off for the house, the generators, and it's that time of the year when I do that. And it's funny because it makes you sit here and think, I do this year after year after year. Spring comes, make sure all the fuel tanks are topped, all the propane tanks are topped, the generators are ready to go, because you never know. Because tomorrow, there may not be a hardware store to get to, let alone be able to have it open and get parts if you were to need them. So as we move on down the line here, let's move along to, we have trillions of dollars in military spending over the years. Catherine Austin Fitz says 21 trillions missing. We have a military-industrial complex that has an enormous amount of money, but do they spend it wisely? When I say do they spend it wisely, private enterprise is in some ways a great thing and in some ways a bad thing, and I'd like to just read something and then we could cover it. I believe, and again, I believe Russia has not fully shown its hand in regards to its full range of electronic weapons capabilities. That's one thing. Another is that in the U.S., everything is a private enterprise. It takes a lot longer and may be less efficient to do it that way. When you're using private enterprise, you have to make a decision in the military. And then in what department is it made? And then you have to have a meeting to make the decision. Then they talk to the companies like Raytheon, who may or may not be able to make these products. By the time you get to the private enterprise working on this, so much time has gone by and so much money has been spent. You've got to ask yourself, how much more efficient is Russia or China's state military technologies, where they say, this is what we want, and they have their best and brightest people go do it, and it's not on a budget. So as that comes along, you now have a situation in the United States where is our naval power up to the job if Russia has the ability to collapse our whole naval fleet with their hypersonic missiles? Bill?
Probably not.
And then consider what happens to the dollar.
Yeah, obviously that's the end result or the end effect. But judging by ships being T-boned and we questioned this as they were happening, for ships to be T-boned and have no horizontal markings means they were dead in the water. They weren't even moving 1 knot. If they were moving 1 knot, you would see sideways tearing, sideways scrapes, and there was nothing. And Jim, as you mentioned, if it becomes public and common knowledge that the Navy or the Air Force or whatever has been technologically leapfrogged, you can kiss the dollar goodbye, and the ultimate, your ultimate target of 56 on the dollar, Jim, I think is pie in the sky.
Yeah, it might be much too high.
Yeah, exactly.
Because what is holding it up except the concept that nobody can take down the U.S. under any circumstances,
Exactly.
and the common share of the U.S. of the United States of America is the U.S. dollar, which gains its falling the same as securities by perception, and that perception, if shown to be incorrect, leaves the dollar with no backing whatsoever. None. Zero. Zip.
Jim, that perception is the reason that the U.S. has been able to borrow, in essence, unlimited amounts of money over these years.
And mathematically, there is no way to pay back the debt that's out there. And if you piled all the currency that's out there, and if you piled all the debt that's out there, it would be like a very small ant standing next to the Jolly Green Giant,
Right.
the debt. So what the message is stop being the market timer. There is no market. There's nothing to time. Get what you need, know how to use what you need, and start putting it into use and practice immediately, or you won't be going through your Boy Scout handbook trying to figure out what this is when the time comes. We are in serious trouble right now and right here. And that could become known by others tonight. And if it was perceived that we've been jumped over in terms of our technology, rendering all our high-tech equipment yesterday's fantasy, what happens to the confidence in the U.S. in its common share? It will look like a flash crash with no bottom. Then what do you do? So rather than sitting out there saying, I want to buy it at a certain price and I want to make this money, be your own central bank and plagiarize China and Russia. When you got the money, you buy it. And what do you do with it? You put it away. And, this hope that you'll never have to use it, you will have to use it, unfortunately. You will have to use it. And how about those people who depend on you? I mean, most everybody listening has family and extended family. You're just going to close your door and let your grandchildren knock like heck on it, trying to get a meal? Be serious. We are in trouble. We don't run the world. We're not the strongest in the world, economically, militaristically, or any other way, now that we've got the new snowflakes all over the place.
David, that's a good segue into the recent gold flows.
Well, okay, perfect. That's where I'm going. And again, I don't want anybody to think for any reason that I am not un-American. I'm not unpatriotic. I'm just a very critical thinker. If I look back, our government has told us a lot of fibs, a lot of lies, a lot of stories, whatever you want to tell. The fiat currency is the biggest story they've been feeding us forever. They tax us to play this military-industrial complex game, and there's nothing left at the end of the rainbow for us. And the reason I say that is, how many times have you seen U.S. media come out and say, geez, the United States is adding to their gold reserves, and you people should be saving more money and possibly putting it in gold and silver? Never in this country, ever. Yet, here we are. Russia buys 300,000 ounces of gold in March and nears 2,000 tons in gold reserves. Russia now holds just over, 1,861 tons, more than officially reported by China. Both Russia and China have the power to destabilize the U.S. dollar by dumping dollar-denominated assets. Turkey's removed all the gold held in the U.S., opting for the Bank of England and BIS. Turkey follows trend to set both Germany and Netherlands and others to remove gold reserves stored in the United States. Central banks' decisions regarding gold reserves are examples of countries becoming nervous about the outlook for the dollar. And I don't want to use the word under the Trump administration, although the article does. This gold game has been going on since Robert Rubin and the strong dollar policy and long before that. But the bottom line is everybody else is acquiring gold, trying to get their hands on gold. And here in the United States, it's like, people know more about Bitcoin than they really do gold. Jim, why don't you jump on that?
Well, there's no question about it. It's the fancy of the time. It's the future of our survival economically. It is without a doubt the replacement for the dollar. It is the new reserve currency, except it is absolutely nothing, and they're making something out of absolutely nothing, and saying we can have casino as the basis for the maintenance of our economies. Casino because what is there? Technical analysis. That's all there is. And technical analysis, we all know, is drawn by those who manipulate markets. Bitcoin, it borders on a joke, yet it has become the religion of the geeks, and the geeks and the snowflakes outnumber us, 1,000 to 1? So, as far as Bitcoin is concerned, it's a joke. Period, end. That because you cannot make something out of nothing. Oh yeah, they've done pretty good with the dollar, but there was an economy, and there was until recently military superiority. Now the economy is not functioning as well as the numbers tell you are, and there's an easy test. We've talked before about it, but we know for a fact that is a truism. And we have just been revealed to those with eyes to see that 105 cruise missiles did not make 105 target hits. Then the question becomes, has Trump fallen in with the basic thesis of controlled news for the purpose of globalism? Because what we had hoped for when we elected him was that we would become rule of law and a nation of truth. So far, I don't see either of those. When I hear him say we had 105 fired and 105 found their target, that's not the truth. In fact, it's the opposite. And it has to be to those who were hoping for an epiphany somewhere with some people and a draining of the swamp. Now, swamp's still working, and lies run the world. And even those we bet on for truth aren't telling us the truth. Bill?
Regarding what you read, David, it brings up two questions with the same answer, I think. First off, why are Russia and China accumulating gold? That's the first question. The second question is, why are nations repatriating gold from the United States? And I think the common answer, wrapped into a big ball, is they don't trust the United States. They don't trust the dollar. That's so. The things that you read and we're seeing. I mean, we saw it with Germany. Germany asked for their gold back, and what did it take? 3 years to get it back, and it wasn't the original bars, and et cetera, et cetera. It's all about trust, and Trust is what has held the dollar together. Trust is what allowed the U.S. to borrow what we've borrowed. And when I say trust, trust that the U.S. was the most powerful. It's all about confidence. And this is a perfect example of nations not only not having confidence, but displaying that they don't have confidence in the dollar in the U.S.
But, Bill, you also have, I wouldn't call it a run on gold, but a little faster than a walk. And I'd like to add to that no nation wants to be the last person to ask for their gold and then be remembered as having discovered that the U.S. doesn't have any.
Sorry.
So there's one more motive in there, a slow walk on gold, which will become a run on gold. And then the cat's out of the bag. What happened in 72? Was it 71? When France was rumored to demand the return of their gold. Didn't we go off? Didn't Nixon can the gold standard? Why? Because we didn't have the gold to give them.
Exactly.
There'd be no other reason, would there? So this idea that we have a fast walk, like a walking race on gold, is going to turn into a sprint. And the last person in that sprint gets nothing, zero, or maybe a lot of the last in that sprint get nothing.
Right.
Yes. So it's not, as you show, we talk about repatriation. Talk about what it really is. A politically correct run on gold. For a reason. China has it for a reason. Russia has it for a reason. Guy running Russia plays three-dimensional chess. He's probably the smartest guy running a nation anywhere on the planet Earth today. And he doesn't pick up red meat when it's thrown in front of him, and he doesn't show off his superiority in terms of weaponry now, because if he did, we'd have to throw everything we had at him immediately. And that's the thermonuclear nuclear war, which is the only way you win is by not playing. So that's where we stand, and that's where these things called markets stand upon. And to try and convince anyone that the way out of this is to leave the complexity and return to simplicity. It sounds too easy, but the answer is it is the only way out of this. And every day goes by that it doesn't happen is a miracle. The fact that it will happen is simple logic. The fact that debt can't be paid back is the old mathematics. 1 and 1 equals 2, not 1 and 1 equals 222 billion. Gold is 500 to 1 leverage. How long do you think you can do that? Forever?
500 to 1 reverse leverage, Jim.
Well, that's what you it's a short reverse leverage, shouldn't it?
Right.
Can that be sustained? So for those who say, "Hey, Jim and guys, they're gonna manipulate gold," and you guys have nothing but dust on the ground. And the answer is, what are we going to? 10,000 to 1? You know what leverage does. Always has and always will. Breaks the bank. And the gold, and all you need is one failure to deliver on one popular exchange for gold and silver, and that house of cards falls straight down. And this stuff with London is the biggest joke on earth. It's obscuration. It's hiding. That's what that whole thing is all about. London.
Jim, we're at 130 to 140% of annual production so far in the first 4 months of the year has gone to London for delivery of both gold and silver.
You got to be serious. Can London hold up the world? Can London hold up the paper? Can London hold up the leverage? Never has. Never will. Obscuration. So if we make it through Monday, it's a miracle, in my own personal opinion. So not being prepared goes beyond stupid. It's suicidal. And if you are suicidal, then everything's wonderful. There is a tomorrow. Everybody can lie. Everybody can cheat. The rule of law doesn't count. The only one to be punished is the president-elect. Those who have committed the crimes are so far totally untouched. And their minions lie like Pinocchio and right in our face, and who cares? I mean, this book tour that's going on with Comey is the damn dumbest thing I've ever seen in my life. Because every time he's questioned, he confesses to a crime.
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
But who cares? Okay? You and I, if we got a parking ticket, would probably get life. And nobody can find where David is because he's in the program already. Understand how serious this is and how it is coming to a point when people really may ask the question is, can a charity get all this money and never be properly investigated and take funds from sovereign nations for favors that are not in the best interest of the U.S.? The answer is somebody's going to get angry real soon. Uranium One, outrageous, totally outrageous. Emails that have gone into past Pluto, totally outrageous. Department of Justice, totally outrageous. FBI, a joke. If the people who run it commit crimes, where are we going, guys? We make it through Monday, it's a miracle. And if you don't have yourself prepared now, you're not going to be prepared, and you're going to be cannon fodder for the globalists. You like that? That's what's going to happen. Hey, David?
David, why don't we finish off with, I know there's more than just this topic, but let's finish off with interest rates.
Well, and again, see, it's all part and parcel of the same thing. You know, again, this is just a roadmap. You're watching that interest rate. You know, you're looking at 3%. You talked about that. Why don't you run with this, Bill? Because this is really, you know, you guys have been on this, and I'm just throwing it out there as bait because I know you've been talking.
Yeah, I mean, the 10-year Treasury has almost doubled, and the lows actually were almost coincidental with the lows in gold. So we've seen gold and interest rates go higher at the same time, which of course is something that the Harry Dents and Martin Armstrongs of the world will say can never happen. Short-term rates are even more severe. We've got the flattest yield curve, meaning short-term rates are almost as high as long-term rates. We've got the flattest yield curve in, going back to 2007 or 10 or 11 years. In any case, this is all happening at a time when there is more debt in existence. There's more debt to GDP. There's more individual debt to income. There's just more debt, no matter how you look at it, than there ever has been before in the history of history. And rising rates is what, I guess when Warren Buffett talks about when the tide goes out, that's when you see who's swimming naked. Rising interest rates is what reveals weak borrowers, and then you start to see failures, and the failures spread. I mean, you remember back in 2008 when you heard Greenspan saying that subprime was contained. Well, no, it wasn't contained. And nothing is going to be contained because the entire system is out of control. I mean, look at the story that Deutsche Bank went back to the ECB and said, well, if we go under, it's going to cost $1.1 trillion. Well, first off, how could they say that? Because they're sitting on a 50 trillion euro book of derivatives. So it could be way, way bigger than that. But secondly, for one bank, where is the 1 trillion euros going to come from? I mean, it's absurd. There's a story out today. Fannie Mae now says they have new loans available for people that can only put down 3%. I mean, how strong is that? How strong of a borrower is that? Someone who can only put down 3%, and if housing goes down 10% and they've got negative value, why not walk away? Hand the bank your keys. It's 2008 all over again. It's 2000 all over again. It's 1987 all over again. When I wrote that article yesterday, Stan Salvixson was a brilliant guy, and he forecast this, that what was going to happen is each time rates would go up, debt would be burst, debt would be popped. And that's exactly what's happened. And that's exactly what is happening right now. And it goes back to, as Jim has said, as I've said, there's more debt and there's more derivatives in the world than there is world. In other words, there's more debt and there's more derivatives than there are assets total in the world. They can't be paid back. They can't perform. And it's can we tell you when? No, we can't tell you when, but we have told you what the ending is. And the ending is complete and utter failure of the current fractional financial system. Jim?
I think you've summed up what we're trying to get people to wake up to. That short-term thinking is over with. Long-term planning is your life raft. Learning how to apply it is absolutely necessary. If you fail to understand that concept, then there is nothing we can do for you. There's nothing anybody can do for you. It's only a question of when, not if, you're finished.
Can I tell you?
I was just going to say, don't do a dance if you see gold at $1,400 or $1,500.
No,
that probably means within a week, 2 weeks' time, you're going to see a melt up in gold and a meltdown in everything, a meltdown in your lifestyle. And no matter how much gold you have, unless you've done other preparations, it's not going to work.
No, that's why. And if you know how to operate the other preparations, it would be rather useful.
Okay, guys, can I jump in? I want to add this piece. See, you guys are the financial geniuses, and everybody asks you the same question: when? And then they follow. Well, if this has been going on for X amount of time, why can't it go on forever? Well, I've tried to interject the part of why it can't go on forever, in the sense that geopolitics is calling our bluff. The United States, for whatever reason, at this particular time is having its bluff call. Russia and China have strategically positioned themselves to call the bluff. They're working together, and that's the why this cannot go on forever, because you have three superpowers. Who is actually the best superpower? I have no idea. Maybe we have the super duper weapon. I have no idea. But you have three superpowers that have now all stood their ground. And ultimately, hot wars, currency wars, proxy wars, this all blows up. So that's the why. This isn't going to go on for 10 more years. It's not going to go on for 5 more years, because the situation is going critical, and somebody has to blink at this stage of the game, or what Jim and Bill are talking about will be a Monday morning reality.
Hey, David.
Yeah?
Along the lines of what you're talking about, the bluff being called, then you've got to ask the question, why? Why would China and why would Russia prepare themselves to live in a world where they don't use SWIFT, they don't use credit from the West, they don't use the dollar? Why have they prepared themselves for a collapse of the U.S.?
It's inevitable. It's mathematically inevitable.
And for the rise of the Silk Road. The whole thing has shifted.
Oh, yeah.
For the rise of the economy of the Silk Road.
Yep.
In other words, they perceive what tomorrow is going to look like, and they intend to take total advantage of it for themselves and for their people. And I don't think leadership gives a rat's ass about their people over here.
And they've made their preparations in a public manner. They've done it completely publicly for anyone willing to dig and to see what they're doing. I mean, if you watch ABC News or CNN or whatever, nobody has a clue what China and Russia have been doing.
And we're doing over here, in the political sense, the only thing we're doing here is obstruction. We have one person that the entire liberal and quasi-liberals are looking at. All they want to do is destroy Trump. They couldn't give a rap at the destroying the world, their world, our world, in the process. And that's exactly what's going on. Politics, obstruction. Have you ever heard of anything dumber? Obstruction is no progress. When there's anything we need, it's progress. You could have a 14-year-old kid today invent the ultimate weapon, okay? Electronically, technologically. Things have changed. Boots on the ground that only used to be the only thing that won a war may not be as pertinent now as they used to be.
Well, and there you have it. I guess we should call today, if you have not prepared already, it's suicidal.
Yeah, it's too late. You killed yourself. Enjoy.
Well, on that note, I'm agreeing 100%, guys. It's like, it's a pain in the butt to do this. When I say, be prepared for this, I would much rather just not deal with any of this. Unfortunately, that's just not my style because I know what's coming. So hopefully,
if I were young enough and strong enough, I would be in some place you could never find me if you tried.
No, you'd be with David then.
The problem is I'm not young enough and I'm not strong enough and am smart enough to know what's coming, and that's a lousy position to be in.
Well, hopefully.
Even Yapper's going wild now.
That's the alarm. All right, well, that's the end, Bill. Jim, thank you very much. That was excellent. And hopefully we can do this again next week.
If we're all here and on the right side of the sod, we shall do it.
All right. Well, we're on.
Again, guys.
Have a great
Bye-bye,
week.
fellas.
Bye.
Thanks an awful lot. Bye-bye.